Hey, I'm James from Smoke North Barbecue, and today I'm doing a 7-month update on my Generation 2 Smoke North offset. The idea at the time was to trade up for some of those new features, and I want to check back in now that I've got just over a half a year under the belt to see if some of those features that I was interested in on paper have turned into actual benefits in practice. Let's get into it. So a quick crash course on some of the changes for the second generation, starting with the most obvious, which is size. So the Carlisle Gen 2 behind me, which is still for sale, more on that a little bit later, went from 60 gallons to 85 gallons. And the offset that I've decided to keep that's not for sale, so the 1 out of 4 that I plan to keep over the long haul, is the Huron Generation 2, and that went from about 90 gallons to 110 gallons in size. In addition to growing in size, we also gained a second level rack with a rib rack to increase our total capacity. And this is something I was really interested in. On my first generation, I could only fit on the main level 4 to 5 racks of ribs. And if you're gonna go through the experience of running a live fire all day, you want enough yield that you never find yourself wanting for more when friends, family, or neighbors come over and everything is all gone. So that extra rib space has been amazing. I've had up to 10 racks of ribs, and in the Carlisle, I haven't yet tried a max capacity, but my guess is pushing close to 20 depending on the size of the ribs that we are using in the Huron Gen 2. In addition to the rib rack and space, we also gained this flat top cook surface. Now this has been something that I've taken advantage of for two main things. One, warming splits. So if you want to have them on here and not potentially have the risk of them catching on fire, I found doesn't really matter. Winter or summer, I'm getting about an ambient temperature using my R gun of about 270 degrees Fahrenheit, which is nice for starting to pre-warm those splits or for simmering sauces. And so I tend to, whether again winter or summer, keep my mock sauce on there and it's simmering. I don't have to let it sit in the smoker, get too hot, too smoky, but I can keep everything simmering along all day using that as a flat top. The next feature that was new for the second generation, and this has probably been the best kept secret or the biggest surprise that I've had, which is the fire grate cooking accessory. My first generation, I did a caveman steer, but this is not something that everybody wants, is to throw their steak directly into the coals. And so gaining access to a cooking grid has opened up a ton of potential. I've done cast iron baked potatoes in here, seared steaks. I've even done a pizza, which I might do a dedicated video. Let me know if you want to see that down in the comments below. But for example, if we're doing ribs, and the kids say, Dad, I want pizza, I don't want ribs for dinner. I've been able to take advantage of all that heat, get a square pizza stone that sits directly on top of my cooking grate, and get a temperature of like 600-700 degrees on that stone because it's sitting directly in the firebox. It turned out a pretty amazing pizza. And so this, for me, has probably been the biggest aha. And now maybe this isn't true, but my bias before ever getting an offset a couple years ago is that they're a bit of a one-trick pony. That's often why I went immediately to grills like my Kamado Joe's, because the versatility. I'm not saying by any means this closes the versatility gap, but it opens up enough meals. There's a lot you can do. This is no longer just a ribs or pulled pork or brisket machine. I've done steaks, chicken, pizzas, you name it. This has opened up a whole bunch more, to the point where you could actually start to think about it as your everyday, every week cook if you have the time provided to manage and maintain your fire. That leads me to another benefit of the Generation 2 is fire management has been so much easier. I've got a complete fire management video, so I won't go into details on that today, but I share what I've learned running a fire on a 30, 60, 85, and 110 gallon offset, because many of the videos on fire management just don't really go into the details that translate really well to a backyard size offset. So if you haven't seen that, I'll put a link down below. So if I had a time machine and could go back in time, would I do it all over again and buy the second generation offsets by Smoke North? That's a yes and a no, and let me explain. So on the yes, I absolutely love everything about my Huron Gen 2. This is hands down, absolutely yes. Now there's a couple things that I missed on my first generation, and you can see they've been addressed here. And so I reached out to Smoke North and said, there's two things that for me, I absolutely loved about my Gen 1, which was first, having a wooden shelf option. I appreciate the stainless steel is easy to wipe clean. It just didn't have the same wow factor. And I guess squeaky wheel gets the oil after letting Mike and the team at Smoke North know. They've decided to add an optional wood upgrade as your shelf material, and I think it looks absolutely fantastic. The second thing that I missed was the degree of knurling on the handle. Now, I've been told since I had the first batch that was made, they went with a little bit of a less aggressive knurl, and this is now back to the same as it was and what I absolutely love. And so I guess everybody after me, you'll get that same great texture that I absolutely loved on my first generation is now part of a Gen 2. So I guess that's maybe unique to me versus so much being applicable to you. So moving into the hesitation on would I buy it again? Well, this really comes down to would I buy both of these again? Now, when I bought both, I genuinely thought I had a Carlisle before and I would just stick with a Carlisle again, but almost immediately seeing that the Huron doesn't take up that much more space in the backyard, it opens up a lot more versatility in terms of how much I can fit and cook and get out of my grill. And it's the easiest offset that I've ever owned in terms of fire management. So the bigger volume cook chamber really reduces those peaks and valleys. So if I were to compare it to my 30-gallon Oklahoma Joe's, that's spikes and valleys. The 60-gallon original Gen 1 Carlisle, a little bit less, but some spikes and valleys, smoothing out even more with my Gen 2 Carlisle, but almost, not quite, but almost flat lines in my Gen 2 Huron, where I just add a fire, go away, and an hour, those logs will continue to hold 250 to 270 degrees, depending on what I do with my damper, and almost hold that in a flat line. When I start to see it just start to soften off, nosedive, that's when I know I need to add my next couple logs, and I can keep on cooking. So this is a resounding yes. But the idea also behind buying two is that I originally didn't know which one I would land on, was to try and do that impartial review. I see so many reviews, but then you find out the person doing the review is sponsored or was given the pit, and I wanted to try and represent truly independent review here, which is why I bought both. And I did, in fact, buy both of these. The thing that I didn't really think about is the difficulty or the loss that I'd be taking in selling that. And there's just not enough money in a YouTube video. Often it's not even enough to cover a brisket. So I would have to do hundreds of videos to cover any sort of depreciation or loss. And so that's maybe not worked out. So I'll have to try and find a way, if I receive a product in the future for free, just to tell you about it and review it as exactly as if I had bought it. Because just buying one of everything that's made available isn't going to work. This has been a little bit of a painful lesson. That being said, if you want a smoking deal and you're located in the GTA, I do have my Carlisle Gen 2 as of today available for sale. Absolutely love it. If I didn't have the Huron to compare it to, which I already have in my yard, I would be absolutely thrilled with it. But for me, I am sold on the Huron. I've had 3 briskets in here, a bunch of ribs, pulled pork, and again, for fire management alone, it's worth it. And even though I've never maxed it out just yet, the fact that I can and not say I'm disappointed that I don't have the space, should we have a larger gathering, this is absolutely something that has me Team Huron. If I was in the market again, starting all over today, if you could afford it, I would jump immediately to the Huron for the fire management benefits alone. Nothing wrong, again, with a Carlisle. That was my first love, and I think many people since that I've spoken to that have bought one absolutely love it. But if you could find that small little stretch in price, I think you gain more than that equivalent in terms of overall space as well as the experience. So 2 thumbs up for the Huron. So just over half a year later, this is the type of review video that I like to do, which is no major surprises. On paper, we thought we'd get a couple upgrades in terms of a flat top, in terms of new accessories like the cooking grate. And that pizza experience alone sold me, let alone everything else that I've done, or more room in the cook chamber with the rib rack, or easier to manage fires with a larger capacity cook chamber. All of these things have played out exactly as I hoped. And so you can count me as a very satisfied customer of my Gen 2. So if you're in the market trying to decide between Carlisle and Huron, based on my experience, if I could do it again, I'd go immediately to the Huron, but I do appreciate there's about, I think, a 20% price increase, but for a 30% if I've got my memory and math right in terms of overall cook volume. So it gets a little bit cheaper per square inch when you look at a total volume perspective. I would absolutely lean on Team Huron. That's it for today, though. I'm James from Smoke North Barbecue, getting ready to sign off. But before I do, if there's a cook that you'd like to see me tackle on the Gen 2 Huron or the Carlisle before it heads out the door, let me know down in the comments. And if you've got any questions about either of these pits or the other 2 offsets that I owned before deciding on these, be sure to check out my monthly Members Live, where I go live once a month and can answer questions in a little bit more of an intimate setting than these pre-recorded videos. But that is it for today, though. I'm James from Smoke North Barbecue signing off. Remember, don't be afraid to fire it up.